mean, this was a huge moment in the trial because he's one of the biggest celebrities.
For Kid Cudi in the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking.
Welcome. Tonight we delve into a story that has sent shockwaves not just through the music industry, but through the very foundations of celebrity culture. A courtroom, usually a place of stark facts and legal jargon, became the stage for an accusation so explosive it left even seasoned observers breathless. We're talking about the ongoing legal battles involving Sean Diddy Combs, but one particular testimony has set the narrative ablaze. Kid Cudi, a titan of modern music in his own right, took the stand and dropped a bombshell allegation.
People that have testified so far, it's probably their first time testifying in a federal trial. So Kid Cudi seemed at ease, but also, I think, stressed to be there.
When Kid Cudi got up to the stand, he talked a little bit about the history between him and Cassie's relationship. Kind of break down what he said about that.
Kid Cudi said that he met Cassie in 2008, and then they eventually made some music together, that it was actually Combs who asked him to collaborate with Cassie, and that at first they were friends, but then the relationship turned romantic. But during this time, he had no idea during the year that he was dating Cassie in 2011 that she was also dating Diddy. At one point, Brian Steele, who cross-examined Kid Cudi, said, "So she was playing both you and Diddy?" And he said yes.
He was asked, what was your reaction to your car being torched? And he just kind of looked, he paused, and then he said, what the? And then you know what he said after that. And then at one point, even prior to that, they asked him if his car, if his Porsche could be repaired, and he started yawning. So obviously a little too early here this morning in New York City for Kid Cudi to be on the stand. So he was yawning at some point.
Claims his car was firebombed, and he believes Diddy was the puppet master behind it, all allegedly stemming from a tangled romantic web involving the singer Cassie. This isn't just a celebrity spat, it's an accusation of a dangerous, violent crime. And Diddy's reaction in court, it was, by all accounts, a spectacle in itself. A mixture of disbelief, anger, and perhaps something more. So what truly unfolded in that courtroom? How did a relationship between two artists and a shared romantic interest escalate to allegations of arson and intimidation? And what does this mean for the legacies of all involved? Over the next half hour, we'll unpack Kid Cudi's startling testimony, examine the complex relationships at the heart of this drama, and dissect the courtroom reactions that have everyone talking. Picture the scene, a high-stakes federal trial. The air is thick with anticipation. All eyes are on the witness stand as Kid Cudi, known for his introspective lyrics and unique sound, prepares to testify. This wasn't a music festival stage. This was a far more daunting arena. Sources describe Cudi as appearing somewhat at ease, yet undeniably stressed. A natural reaction for anyone, let alone a celebrity, testifying in such a high-profile case. The prosecution began by establishing Cudi's history, particularly his connection to Cassie Ventura. Cudi recounted meeting Cassie back in 2008, their paths crossed, and eventually they collaborated musically. Interestingly, Cudi stated it was Diddy himself who initially suggested he work with Cassie. A professional connection blossomed into friendship, and by 2011, that friendship, according to Cudi, had turned romantic. But here's the first twist in this intricate saga. Cudi testified that throughout the year he was dating Cassie, he had absolutely no idea she was simultaneously involved with Sean Combs. It was a revelation that seemingly caught Cudi by surprise at the time. During a pointed cross-examination, Diddy's attorney, Brian Steele, famously known for representing Young Thug, posed the question directly. So she was playing both you and Diddy? Kid Cudi's reported answer was a simple yes. This admission alone painted a picture of a complicated emotional landscape. Then came the moment that truly ignited the courtroom. Cudi was asked about his reaction to discovering his car had been torched. There was a pause, a visible moment of recollection. He looked then, almost incredulously, uttered the words, "What the?" followed by an expletive that underscored his shock and disbelief. It was raw, unfiltered, and it resonated. Earlier in his testimony, when questioned if his Porsche could be repaired after the incident, Cudi, perhaps betraying the early hour or the stress, was seen yawning. A small human moment, but one that highlighted the surreal nature of him recounting such a traumatic event. So what exactly happened to Kid Cudi's car, and why does he believe Diddy is connected? Let's rewind to the night of the incident. Cudi explained he was staying at an ex-girlfriend's house. In the early hours of the morning,
Let's just say it left people whispering.
So on this particular night, he's staying at an ex-girlfriend's house, and while he's there, early in the morning, he gets a call from his dog's babysitter who's house sitting for him and says, "Your car's on fire in the driveway." So, he instructs her to call 911. The authorities and the fire department show up at his house, and then he calls a friend to go there and start taking pictures of his car. When he gets there, authorities are already at the scene, and what they find is something called a Molotov cocktail. That was a bottle with liquid in it and a rag that had been set on fire, and somebody had cut the roof of his convertible and dropped it inside. And then we saw pictures of all this damage today, and he said that unfortunately his car could not be repaired. So police collected all of this evidence, and there was some sort of an investigation. But today we heard on cross-examination Brian Steele, who's a very famous attorney out of Atlanta who represented Young Thug in his state RICO case. And he got up there and really tried to poke holes in this idea that Combs was the one who destroyed his Porsche. And he said, look, there was an investigation, nobody was charged, and they even took DNA evidence and fingerprints at the scene. And what connects Combs to this incident, right? Because all we really know is that Cassie said that Combs threatened to do this, but there isn't any security footage. There isn't any proof that Combs either told somebody to do it or actually did it himself. So Kid Cudi says that the very next day after this car incident, he actually meets Diddy at Soho House. So he's like, enough is enough. I'm going to call Combs. So he calls Combs. He's like, we need to meet up. So they decide to meet at Soho House, which is this very famous private members-only club that has locations all around the world. Kid Cudi arrives at Soho House, and Diddy's head of security, D-Rock, takes him to this conference room. And he actually described to the jury that when he walked in, Combs was looking out the window with his arms behind his back, and he said he looked like a Marvel supervillain. And at that point, the entire courtroom started to laugh. And so he's describing how they're both talking about how Diddy didn't know that Kid Cudi was dating Cassie, and Kid Cudi didn't know that Cassie was also dating Diddy. He said after this meeting was over, he stood up and he shook Diddy's hand, and that everything was calm. There was no screaming, there were no threats, but he said to Diddy, "So what are we going to do about my car?" And that's when Diddy said, "What are you talking about?" So again, that's something that Diddy's attorney, Brian Steele, really tried to poke holes in. Like, Combs never said that he did this to your car. What proof do you have that he is the one behind this?
He received a frantic call from his dog sitter, who was house sitting for him. The message was alarming. "Your car is on fire in the driveway." Cudi instructed her to call 911 immediately. The fire department and authorities rushed to his home. Simultaneously, Cudi called a friend asking them to go to his house and document the scene with pictures. By the time Cudi arrived, emergency services were already there, and the scene was grim. What they found was evidence of a deliberate act, a Molotov cocktail. Cudi described it as a bottle filled with liquid, a rag stuffed into it, set ablaze, and then horrifically dropped inside his Porsche convertible after someone had apparently cut open the soft top roof. The courtroom was shown photographs of the charred remains of his beloved car, a vehicle he confirmed was beyond repair. Police collected evidence, including fingerprints and DNA, and an investigation was launched. However, as Brian Steele emphasized during cross-examination, no one was ever charged in connection with the firebombing. This is a critical point the defense hammered home. What tangible proof beyond Cudi's belief and Cassie's alleged warnings directly links Sean Combs to this act? There's no reported security footage of Diddy or his associates at the scene. No paper trail, no smoking gun presented in court thus far. So, what makes Cudi so convinced? He alleges the motive was Diddy's jealousy over his relationship with Cassie. Cassie, a singer and model, was famously in a long-term, high-profile, on-again, off-again relationship with Diddy for over a decade. To the public, they were often a power couple, but whispers of volatility and control within the relationship have long circulated. Cudi's testimony suggests that his own burgeoning romance with Cassie, during a period when Diddy may have still considered her his own, was the flashpoint for this alleged violent retribution. He believes Diddy felt betrayed or disrespected, and that the firebombing was a message. The firebombing wasn't an isolated incident in Cudi's narrative of alleged harassment. He also recounted an unsettling event from December 2011, predating the car fire, which he believes laid the groundwork for his fears. Cassie, he testified, called him in a panic around 5:30 or 6 a.m. She was incredibly stressed, claiming Diddy had just discovered they were dating. According to Cudi, Cassie told him Diddy had demanded Cudi's address, and she, in her fear, or under duress, had given it to him. She was, Cudi said, very, very worried about what Diddy might do. Cudi, though confused, as he believed Cassie and Diddy were no longer involved, said he sprung into action. He picked Cassie up from her apartment and took her to the Sunset Marquis Hotel in Los Angeles, a place he thought would be safe. While there, the situation escalated. A friend of Cassie's called with disturbing news. I'm sitting in front.
Physically violent, but he also testified that he was not aware of any sexual violence.
Now, he also talked about an incident from December 2011, which had to do with a break-in into his house. Can you tell me a little bit about what he said about that incident?
So Kid Cudi talked about an incident from December 2011 when Cassie called him one morning around 5:30, 6 a.m. and that she was very stressed out. She said Diddy had just found out that they were dating and that he had asked for his address and that Cassie gave him Kid Cudi's address and that she was very, very worried about what he was going to do next. So he said that when he got that phone call from Cassie that he sprung into action, although he was confused about why it would matter if Sean Combs knew that he was dating Cassie because he had no reason to believe that they were still romantically involved. Remember, Kid Cudi had been dating Cassie, he says, for about a year at this point. He went and he got her from her apartment and he took her to the only place he thought would keep her safe, which is the Sunset Marquis. It's a hotel in LA. So in this phone call with Cassie, she says, look, Diddy knows we're dating. He asked for your address. I gave him your address, and I'm so scared right now. So he goes and he picks her up at her place and takes her to the Sunset Marquis Hotel. While they're there, they got a phone call from a friend of Cassie's who said, I'm sitting in front of your house right now, Kid Cudi. Sean Combs and an associate of his are inside your house. And that's when he was like, what is going on? He said he was angry. So he gets in his car. He said it was a Porsche 911 convertible. And on his way to the house, that's when he's starting to get worried about, what am I walking into? Could Combs have weapons? Who else could be there at the house? Could this turn violent? Although he said he did want to fight Combs for breaking into his house. And so he called 911, but he also called Combs and he said, why are you in my house? And he said, I'm on my way. So when he got to his house, Diddy wasn't there. What he did notice was that his surveillance cameras were turned the other way. Some Christmas presents were unwrapped from Chanel for his family. And that also his dog was in a bathroom with the door closed. And he said, he was looking around. He didn't see Diddy. He calls Diddy and he's like, where are you? And Combs is like, I'm on my way to your house. But Combs never shows up. The police show up and Kid Cudi files a police report. So after all of this, he ends up having some text exchanges with Combs. Combs says, I want to talk to you. And Kid Cudi actually went to Cassie's home for the holidays in Connecticut for Christmas, and he said he didn't want to talk to Diddy. He was really upset that he had gone into his house, that his dog was all shook up by the incident and acting jittery, and that he just really had a bad taste in his mouth about everything.
Diddy has built his career on thriving under pressure, but in court...
Of your house right now, Kid Cudi. Sean Combs and an associate of his are inside your house. Cudi described feeling angry and alarmed. He got into his Porsche 911 convertible, the same one later torched, and headed home, his mind racing. What was he walking into? Could Diddy be armed? He testified he wanted to confront Combs for breaking into his house. En route, he called 911 and, significantly, he also called Diddy directly, asking, "Why are you in my house?" and telling him he was on his way. When Cudi arrived, Diddy was gone, but the scene was disturbing. His surveillance cameras had been turned away. Christmas presents he'd bought for his family from Chanel were unwrapped, and his dog was found locked in a bathroom, visibly shaken. Cudi filed a police report. He later exchanged texts with Diddy, who expressed a desire to talk. Cudi, however, was upset and traveled to Connecticut to spend Christmas with Cassie and her family, wanting no contact with Combs. He was deeply unsettled by the home invasion and its impact on his dog, which he said acted jittery for a long time after. Fast forward to the day after the car firebombing. Cudi, having reached his limit, decided to confront Diddy. He called him and they agreed to meet at Soho House, the exclusive members-only club. Cudi described being met by Diddy's head of security, D-Rock, and escorted to a conference room. His description of Diddy's entrance was cinematic. Combs was allegedly looking out the window, arms clasped behind his back, in a pose Cudi likened to a Marvel supervillain. The courtroom reportedly chuckled at this characterization. During their conversation, they discussed the overlapping relationships with Cassie, with both men supposedly expressing surprise at the situation. Cudi said the meeting itself was calm, no screaming, no overt threats. As it concluded, Cudi stood up, shook Diddy's hand, and then posed the crucial question: "So what are we going to do about my car?" Diddy's alleged response was one of feigned ignorance. "What are you talking about?" This denial, in the face of Cudi's strong suspicions, became another point Brian Steele would later probe, emphasizing that Diddy never admitted to any involvement. Sean Combs, a man who has built an empire on an image of cool control and unshakable confidence, faced an undeniable challenge as Kid Cudi laid out these accusations. How did he react? According to numerous courtroom observers, the moment the firebombing allegation directly implicating him was voiced, the atmosphere shifted. Diddy's usual composed demeanor reportedly cracked. Onlookers described him as visibly shaken, his eyebrows furrowed, his expression a cocktail of disbelief and rising anger. There was an initial pause, as if the gravity of Cudi's words was sinking in. Then, a spark of undeniable irritation. Witnesses claimed he began whispering animatedly to his legal team, then sat back, arms crossed tightly across his chest. Classic defensive body language. He was seen shaking his head repeatedly, muttering to those around him. For a man who has navigated the treacherous currents of the music industry for decades, this was a rare public display of raw, seemingly unmanaged emotion. The accusation wasn't just a legal challenge, it felt personal, and his reaction reflected that. One witness claimed to overhear Diddy mutter under his breath,
dog sitter, and then he went in. We saw some photographs of the torching of that Porsche. You saw the inside of the door, and then we have some testimony we can put up for you on the screen in which he was talking about what exactly took place. Let's go ahead and put that up for you. He was saying that he told the jury that after Combs found out he was dating Ventura, Combs allegedly broke into his house. When he got back home, Cudi noticed that his security cameras had been moved and his dog was locked in the bathroom. He testified that he had filed a police report. Also some other testimony that we can put up for you in which he was talking more about the Molotov cocktail car fire. This was in 2012. The jury did see some photographs of the car damage. He testified, "It looks like the top of my Porsche was cut open, and that's where the Molotov cocktail was put in." So the cross-examination of Kid Cudi is just getting underway. So what he's being asked by Mr. Steele, defense counsel, one of the defense counsel for Sean Combs, is about his relationship with Cassie and how he had said on the stand, Kid Cudi, that he felt Cassie played him because he was under the impression that him, Sean Combs, as well as Cassie, were no longer dating. So Mr. Steele used his words, and he said, "Yeah, I did feel like that." And so he said he was upset that Cassie had returned back to Sean Combs. So really interesting to see him up there on the stand, very cool, calm, collected in his testimony. Sean Diddy is sitting back in his chair, just listening.
"This is ridiculous," his voice sharp but restrained. At another point, as questions swirled around Cassie as the alleged motive, he reportedly leaned forward abruptly, as if on the verge of interjecting, before his lawyers seemingly cautioned him to remain calm. There was even a report of a brief, heated verbal exchange with opposing counsel that prompted the judge to intervene. This reaction is significant. Was it the indignation of a man falsely accused of a heinous act? Or was it the unease of someone whose carefully constructed facade was being chipped away? His legal team, led by Brian Steele, is working hard to dismantle Cudi's testimony by highlighting the lack of direct physical evidence. Steele's cross-examination focused on Cudi's potential bias, his feelings of being played by Cassie, and the fact that no official investigation ever implicated Combs in the firebombing or the break-in. Legally, Cudi's accusation alone, however compelling his delivery, isn't enough for criminal charges. For that, prosecutors would need concrete corroborating evidence, something that, so far, hasn't publicly surfaced. Without it, this remains a powerful he-said situation. Diddy's team could even consider a defamation lawsuit against Cudi, arguing these claims are false and damaging, though that carries its own risks if any undisclosed evidence supporting Cudi were to emerge. The prosecution, however, aims to use Cudi's testimony as a brick in a larger wall they're building around. Diddy, alleging a pattern of behavior. They argue Cudi's testimony is credible, delivered with a conviction that resonates. The jury is tasked with deciding how much weight to give his words, especially in the absence of a definitive link. Segment 5, the Cassie connection and unanswered questions, approx 4 minutes. Host, at the very heart of this storm is Cassie Ventura. Once known for her smooth R&B hits and her long public association with Diddy, she's now a pivotal figure in this unfolding drama. Her alleged relationships with both men, whether concurrent or sequential, intentional or unintentional in their overlap, form the bedrock of the prosecution's theory of motive. Kid Cudi testified that Cassie had told him about Diddy's alleged past physical violence towards her, though he was unaware of any sexual violence. This adds another layer to her perceived vulnerability and perhaps explains her alleged fear when Diddy discovered her relationship with Cudi. Why would Cassie's involvement with Kid Cudi trigger such an allegedly extreme reaction from Diddy? Was it purely jealousy, or as some speculate, was it about control? Diddy has often been portrayed as fiercely protective of his image and those within his orbit. Cassie was, for a significant period, closely tied to the Diddy brand. Her forging an independent connection, especially with another prominent artist like Kid Cudi, could have been seen as a defiance or a threat to Diddy's sphere of influence. What did Cassie know? Was she aware that Cudi might make these specific allegations in court, or was she as blindsided as everyone else by the explicit firebombing claim? Her past, her statements, and her relationships are now under intense scrutiny, knowingly or unknowingly casting her as a central character in this high-stakes power play. The entire scenario raises uncomfortable questions about power dynamics in the entertainment industry. The pressure, the blurred lines between personal and professional, and the lengths to which individuals might allegedly go to maintain control or exact revenge. Kid Cudi's testimony, whether ultimately proven with hard evidence against Diddy or not, has undeniably painted a disturbing picture. Kid Cudi's allegations against Sean Diddy Combs are more than just celebrity gossip. They are serious claims of criminal activity, intimidation, and a profound abuse of power, all supposedly fueled by jealousy and control centered around Cassie. The courtroom has heard Cudi's version of events, delivered with a conviction that many found compelling. We've seen Diddy's visceral reaction, a rare glimpse behind the curtain of a music mogul. The defense rightly points to the lack of forensic evidence directly linking Diddy to the firebombing, yet Cudi's detailed account of the break-in, Cassie's alleged warnings and the subsequent car torching, followed by Diddy's alleged denial at Soho House, weaves a narrative that is, at the very least, deeply troubling. This case is far from over. The legal battle will continue, and more testimonies may emerge. But Kid Cudi's bomb of the decade has already changed the landscape, forcing a re-examination of power, fame, and the dark undercurrents that can flow beneath the glittering surface of stardom. Was Diddy's courtroom reaction a sign of an innocent man outraged by false accusations? Or was it the response of someone whose carefully guarded secrets were being laid bare? The truth, as is often the case, may be far more complex than any single testimony can reveal. We'll continue to follow this story as it develops.
Really what the prosecution is doing. And remember, this conspiracy concept is basically designed to take every bad act, regardless of who did it, how they were connected to Combs, and then wrap them around them. And so this is just one more piece of that. And what I think you're really getting from Kid Cudi is credibility. I mean, there's nothing about this that doesn't even feel false. It feels true in the sense of how he's delivering it. I recognize that the defense is trying to say, well, yeah, you might have some biases and you might have some issues tied to Cassie and how those were played and how that might motivate you to either exaggerate or post blame in ways that you can't. But the problem is it's coming across as really, really credible, and that's going to resonate with the jury, and it's up to them to sort of take that brick and put it into the wall. But I think it's happening very slowly, very carefully, very clearly. When we think about somebody testifying, one of the things that you want to do is you want to basically introduce this person to the jury and say, understand who they are, their motivations, where they are sort of in the context of this case, and that you can trust them if you're introducing them. So when they take the stand and they start talking, you say, I believe that, because of, as you just described, his own personal position. He's credible. What he's saying isn't hardly in some ways tied to Combs himself.